The Malthari salvage cruiser, Echo of the Void, drifted through the wreckage of the battle, like a mourner at a funeral. Its bioluminescent panels pulsed in slow, mournful rhythms, casting eerie violet, white light across twisted metal and shattered crystalline hull fragments. The debris field stretched for kilometers, a graveyard of warships from both sides, their once gleaming organic alloys now lifeless husks, their flowing energy currents extinguished. Commander Malvar stood at the observation blister, his four-fingered hands pressed against the translucent aerogel surface, his silver-ridged face reflected in the curved pane, his violet eyes scanning the destruction with cold efficiency. The third Malthari fleet had been annihilated here, torn apart by the relentless human counterattack. The reports had called it a tactical withdrawal. Malvar knew better. This was a massacre. Behind him, scientist Thalolan adjusted the atmospheric condensers, her delicate fingers dancing over the holographic readouts. The ship's internal gravity fluctuated slightly, another sign of the damage they had sustained. Still no life signs? Malvar asked, his voice a low hum resonating through the chamber like wind through crystal. Thalolan's crest of sensory tendrils flickered in agitation. None. The radiation levels are too high. Nothing organic could have survived this. Malvar exhaled through his gill slits. He had expected as much. The humans had not left survivors. They never did, faint, irregular, but unmistakable. Thalolan's fingers froze mid-motion. The ship's scanners, designed to detect the faintest energy signatures, had just registered something alive in the wreckage. Malvar's spine stiffened. Where? Thalolan manipulated the display, her voice tight. 300 meters starboard, buried in the wreckage of a human dropship. Malvar's instincts flared. A human survivor here, after all this time. Thalolan's tendrils coiled in unease. It's not human. The biosignature is Malthari. Malvar's blood turned to ice. The salvage drones retrieved the wreckage with careful precision, their manipulators peeling back layers of scorched human alloy. Inside, curled in the remains of a ruptured escape pod, lay a Malthari female, her once luminous skin dulled by exhaustion, her crystalline armor cracked. Clutched in her arms was a child, barely more than an infant, its tiny chest rising in shallow, labored breaths. Malvar's breath caught. They were alive. The escape pod was human in design, a standard troop deployment module, modified. The interior was lined with emergency medical gel, the kind humans used to stabilize wounded soldiers. A crude but effective life support system had kept the two Malthari alive, cycling oxygen from the wreckage's failing systems. Thalolan ran a scanner over the female's injuries, her voice hushed. She's been treated. These wounds, they were dressed with human field dressings. Malvar's mind reeled. A human had done this. A human had pulled a Malthari from the wreckage, sealed her in an escape pod, and rigged it to keep her alive. The child whimpered, its tiny fingers curling weakly. The female stirred, her violet eyes fluttering open. She saw Malvar, recognized his rank, and her voice was a broken whisper. He saved us. Malvar leaned closer. Her breath shuddered. The human, the one in the black armor. Then her gaze flickered to something behind him. Malvar turned. The wreckage shifted, and deep in the shadows of the ruined dropship, something moved. Thalolan's scanner screamed, a sudden violent spike in biosignatures. But dozens, and they were all human. Malvar's hand went to his sidearm. The wreckage breathed. The first set of glowing eyes ignited in the dark. Section Fey. The receipts don't lie. The wreckage groaned like a dying beast, its twisted metal ribs flexing under unseen pressure. Malvar's fingers tightened around his sidearm, the polished alloy cold against his palm. Thalolan's scanner wailed, a shrill, panicked thing, its bioluminescent display painting jagged violet spikes across his face. Not scavengers, not some feral void, drifting species. and they had been here the whole time. The first set of eyes ignited, twin embers in the dark, a baleful amber glow that cut through the drifting particulate like signal flares. Then another pair, and another. The shadows moved, shifting with the liquid grace of predators who knew the contours of the dark better than light itself. Malvar's pulse thundered in his secondary arteries. His training screamed at him to fire, to cut them down before they could close the distance. But some primal instinctive warning, locked his muscles in place. They weren't attacking. The armored figures stood motionless, their forms half, submerged in the wreckage's skeletal remains. Their armor was unlike anything in Malthari archives. Black as void, chilled carbon, its surface etched with the scars of 100 battles, its edges sharp enough to draw blood from the air itself. It breathed, subtle hydraulic whines humming beneath layers of reinforced plating. One of them stepped forward. The Malthari escort flinched, their weapons snapping up in unison. Thalolan's breath hitched, the human ignored them. It moved toward the injured female, its movements deliberate, unhurried. The child whimpered, pressing closer to its mother. The female's violet eyes widened, not in fear, Malvar realized, but in recognition. The human knelt, its armor hissed, segmented plates shifting as it reached for its hip. Malvar's finger twitched against the trigger, and then froze as the human produced not a weapon, but a medkit. A Malthari medkit. The female's breath shuddered. The human didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its actions were a language all their own. With mechanical precision, it injected the child with a stabilizer compound, then pressed a regeneration pad against the female's lacerated side. The gel hissed as it bonded with her flesh, the nanites within already knitting torn tissue. Malvar's mind reeled. This wasn't just aid. This was their technology, their medicine, and the human was using it on them. Thalolan's voice was a hushed tremor. Malvar, look. His gaze followed the scientist's trembling finger. Scattered across the human's armor, embedded in the plating like gruesome trophies, were shards of Malthari alloy. Purple, white crystalline fragments, the jagged remains of a dozen different ship sigils. Battle honors, this human had fought them before. And yet, here it was, saving one of their own. The contradiction burned in Malvar's skull. Then the human turned its helmet toward him. The visor was a black abyss, featureless, impenetrable, until, with a soft click, the external display activated. Data scrolled across its surface, medical records, inventory manifests. Malvar's breath left him in a rush. Every item the human had used to save the female and her child, every scrap of Malthari tech, every drop of medicine, was catalogued, quantified, accounted for, as if the human expected to be reimbursed. Thalolan made a choked noise. They're not just saving her, they're keeping records. The wreckage creaked, the other humans shifted, not advancing, not retreating, simply waiting. Malvar's hand fell away from his sidearm. The message was clear. The humans weren't here to fight. They were here to settle a debt. The wreckage groaned around them, a dying beast exhaling its last breath. The Malthari cruiser's organic architecture, once flowing with luminous purple, white energy, now flickered erratically, casting jagged shadows across the torn hull. The air smelled of ionized metal and something acrid, burnt flesh perhaps, or the lingering ozone of ruptured power conduits. Malvar's spines pressed flat against his skull. The human stood before him, motionless, its armored form a silhouette against the emergency lighting. The visor's display continued its relentless scroll, numbers, symbols, itemized lists, each line a merciless testament to accountability. Thalolan's voice was barely a whisper. They don't just save, they document. A shiver ran through Malvar's veins. This wasn't compassion. This was transaction. The human shifted slightly, the servos in its armor whining softly. Behind it, the other humans remained still, their weapons lowered but not sheathed. Malvar's hand hovered near his sidearm, fingers twitching. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to reclaim control. But the female and her child still lay between them, their breaths shallow, their bodies wrapped in Malthari med, foam applied by human hands. A debt had been incurred, and the humans expected repayment. Thalolan took a hesitant step forward, his bioluminescent markings pulsing with nervous energy. His scientific mind had already begun dissecting the implications. Itemized aid, recorded expenditures, a ledger of mercy. It was grotesque. It was brilliant. The humans had turned salvation into a contract. Malvar's mandibles tightened. The Malthari Dominion had protocols for first contact, carefully curated exchanges of technology, culture, diplomacy. None of them accounted for this. A human saving a Malthari life, then presenting the bill. The wreckage shuddered again, a deep metallic groan resonating through the deck. Somewhere in the distance, a power conduit failed, sending a cascade of sparks raining down like dying stars. The human's helmet tilted slightly, as if listening to some unseen signal. Then, with deliberate slowness, it reached into a compartment on its thigh. Malvar tensed. Thalolan's breath caught. The human withdrew. A data chip, small, unassuming. It extended the chip toward Malvar, the gesture unmistakable. Thalolan's spines flared in disbelief. "They're giving us the records?" Malvar hesitated. This was a trap. It had to be, some human trick, a Trojan gift wrapped in the guise of bureaucracy. But the female whimpered behind him, her child stirring weakly in her arms. His resolve cracked. He reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the chip, the human's visor flickered, and the display changed. A single line of text appeared, stark against the black. Debt settled. Then beneath it, smaller interest accruing. Malvar's blood ran cold. The humans weren't just keeping track, they were investing. The wreckage groaned one final time, a death rattle trembling through the hull. The human turned away, its armored boots clicking against the deck as it rejoined its squad. The others fell into formation behind it. Their movements synchronized, effortless. No words were exchanged, none were needed. Thalolan exhaled sharply, his mind racing. "They didn't come to conquer," he murmured. "They came to collect." Malvar's grip tightened around the data chip. First contact had failed, and in its place, something far more dangerous had begun. A business relationship, Section Fe. Warranty void if tampered with. The Malthari cruiser Echo of Dawn drifted in the debris field like a dying beast, its once gleaming organic hull now cracked and bleeding streams of ionized plasma. The human boarding pod had breached near engineering, not through brute force, but through something far more unsettling. It had phased through the outer shielding, its matte black surface shimmering with quantum distortion, before solidifying inside their sanctum. Malvar watched from the command spire, his secondary eyelids flickering as the tactical display updated. The humans moved with methodical precision, their powered armor absorbing the dim violet emergency lighting without reflection. No wasted motion, no hesitation. They advanced through the ship's arteries like antibodies through a bloodstream, bypassing security nodes with preloaded access codes. Thalolan's trembling fingers danced across his console, pulling up the schematics of the nearest human. The armor was a paradox, brutalist angles layered over biomechanical flexors, its surface etched with warning glyphs in a dozen languages. One phrase repeated near the shoulder pauldrons, "Warranty void if tampered with." A joke. It had to be. Then the diagnostics scrolled. Thalolan's breath hitched. The armor's inner layer wasn't just armored. It was alive. Nanofiber musculature, self-repairing ceramite, synaptic response times faster than organic nerves. And the power source Malvar, Thalolan whispered. Their core isn't fusion or antimatter. It's a scream echoed from the lower decks. Malvar's crest flared. The humans weren't just boarding, they were hunting. 3 decks below, Corporal David Felger stepped over the twitching remains of a Malthari sentry drone, its crystalline carapace split by a single vibro blade incision. His HUD flickered, tagging the heat signatures ahead, 2 civilians, 1 juvenile, sheltering behind a collapsed aerogel conduit. The child was crying. Felger paused. Protocol demanded neutralization of potential combatants, but the tiny 4-fingered hands clutching at its mother's robes weren't holding a weapon. They were holding a toy, a fragile construct of woven light, its pale violet strands fraying at the edges. His targeting reticule wavered, a click in his comms. Commander Sullivan's voice, dry as lunar dust. "Problem, Corporal." Felger exhaled. "Negative, ma'am. Just verifying." He stepped past them, his armor's knee joints hissing softly. The mother flinched, curling around her child, her bioluminescent markings pulsing in terror. Felger didn't look back, but as he moved down the corridor, his suit's external speakers emitted a low, rhythmic vibration, a subsonic pulse the Malthari couldn't consciously hear. Deep in their hindbrains, the frequency registered. Thalolan's console beeped. He stared at the readout, then at Malvar. They bypassed the armory, ignored the bridge. There, his voice cracked. "They're heading for Cargo Bay Faye." Malvar's blood chilled. Cargo Bay Faye held only one thing: the Echo's experimental drive core, a prototype ripped from a derelict precursor vessel. Stolen tech. A human voice crackled over the ship-wide comms, unnervingly cheerful. "Attention Malthari crew. Per Galactic Convention Faye, you are in possession of unlicensed intellectual property. Surrender the device and well waive the fines." Then, softer, "You have 30 seconds. Thalolan's hands shook. "They're not soldiers. They're repo men." Malvar gripped his sidearm. The humans hadn't come for conquest. They'd come to repossess what was theirs, and the receipt, it seemed, was already printed. Section Faye. The previous owner, Thalolan's fingers hovered over the console, the bioluminescent keys casting violet shadows across his trembling hands. The human's voice still echoed in the air, that infuriating, casual tone, as if they were discussing docking fees rather than the seizure of a precursor artifact worth more than entire star systems. Malvar's crest pulsed with suppressed rage. The Echo's corridors hummed with the ship's distress, the walls thrumming in time with the erratic heartbeat of its overtaxed systems. The humans had moved like ghosts, slipping past every defense, every failsafe, as if the Malthari's vaunted security protocols were nothing more than child's puzzles. And now they were in Cargo Bay Faye. Thalolan's display flickered, pulling up the bay's internal feed. The image was grainy, distorted by the drive core's interference, but the shapes were unmistakable. 2 figures in matte black armor, their silhouettes jagged with angular plating and reinforced joints. No ceremonial flourishes, no ostentatious sigils, just brutal, functional design. One of them knelt beside the precursor core, its gloved hands moving with methodical precision over the crystalline housing. The other stood guard, its helmet turning slightly, scanning. Then it looked up directly into the camera. Thalolan flinched as if struck. Malvar's breath hissed between his teeth. They knew we were watching. A new transmission crackled over the comms. Not the cheerful repo agent this time. This voice was deeper, rougher, the kind of tone that carried the weight of command. "Malthari Vessel Echo, this is Commander Helen Sullivan of the Terran Enforcement Division. Your crew is not our target. Stand down, and no one gets hurt." A pause, then almost imperceptibly softer, "We're here for the previous owner." Thalolan's blood ran cold. The precursor core wasn't just stolen tech, it was alive. The cargo bay's atmosphere shimmered with displaced energy, the air thick with the scent of ozone and something else. Something organic, like wet soil after rain. The human in black armor, Sullivan, presumably touched the core's surface, and for the first time, Thalolan saw it react. Tendrils of light, faint and flickering, curled toward her fingers, Malvar's grip on his sidearm tightened. "They didn't come for the tech," he murmured. "They came for it." The Lowland's mind raced. The precursors were long extinct, their ruins scattered across the galaxy like bones. But if even a fragment of their consciousness lingered in that core, the second human shifted, and the Lowland's console blared an alert. Power surge detected. The core pulsed. A shockwave of violet energy rippled outward, sending the human staggering. The feed cut out for a heartbeat, then flickered back, just in time to show the core's housing splitting open, revealing a swirling mass of light and shadow. Not human, not Malthari, something older. It spoke in a language none of them knew, yet the Lowland understood it all the same. "You came back." Sullivan's helmet tilted. When she answered, her voice was quiet, almost reverent. "Yeah, we keep our promises." The Lowland's screen went dark. Malvar exhaled, slow and unsteady. The humans hadn't just known about the core. They'd known it would speak, and they had answered. The silence on the Malthari command deck was absolute. Malvar's talons flexed against the armrests of his chair, the crystalline alloy creaking under the pressure. His third eyelids flicked shut, then open again, as if the act of blinking might reset reality. It didn't. The feed from the human vessel remained dark, but the words still echoed in his skull. "You came back." "Yeah, we keep our promises." The Lowland's hands hovered over his console, trembling. His neural interface flickered with half-processed data, energy signatures, linguistic patterns, the impossible resonance of a voice that should not exist. The precursors had been dust for eons. Their ruins were relics, their technology inert. That core had spoken, and the humans had answered. Malvar exhaled through his secondary vents, the sound ragged. He had spent cycles dismissing humanity as reckless, impulsive, a species barely clinging to the fringes of civilization. But this was not recklessness. This was knowledge. The Lowland's voice was barely audible. They knew. Malvar didn't need to ask what he meant. The humans had walked onto that derelict, knowing exactly what they would find. And they had brought receipts, aboard the human vessel. Commander Helen Sullivan stood motionless before the core. The swirling mass of violet light pulsed in time with her breathing, as if it recognized her. Behind her, Corporal Felger shifted, his powered armor whining softly as he adjusted his stance. "Mom," he murmured. "That thing just—" The core's voice had been ancient, layered with harmonics no human throat could replicate. But the meaning had been clear. "You came back." Sullivan's HUD flickered with incoming data, biometric spikes, radiation levels, the slow, rhythmic thrum of the core's energy signature syncing with her own heartbeat. The precursors had built this place. They had left it behind. And now, somehow, it remembered. Felger's grip tightened on his rifle. Orders. Sullivan didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out, her gauntlet hovered inches from the core's surface, the energy swirling toward her like liquid drawn to gravity. A transmission cut through the static, not from the core. From outside, Lowland's voice crackled over the comms, strained with urgency. "Commander Sullivan, we're detecting an energy surge in the outer debris field. Something's." The feed dissolved into static. Sullivan's HUD flashed red. "Incoming contact. Unidentified." Felger swore. The core pulsed once, violently, as if in warning. And then the lights went out. On the Malthari flagship, alarms shrieked. The Lowland's console lit up with emergency protocols, the translucent panels flaring crimson. The energy surge wasn't from the core. It was from something else, something moving, something alive. Malvar's spines flared. "Report." The Lowland's voice was hollow. "We have multiple contacts emerging from the debris field." There, his words died as the first silhouette resolved on the scanners. It was a ship, but not like any ship Malvar had ever seen. Its hull was jagged, asymmetrical, its edges shifting like smoke. Purple, white energy crackled along its surface. But it wasn't Malthari. It wasn't anything recognizable, and it was heading straight for the human vessel. Malvar's blood ran cold. The humans had awakened something. And now, whatever it was, it had come to collect. Felger's armor compensated for the sudden darkness, his HUD switching to thermal imaging. The core still glowed, but the light was erratic, pulsing like a wounded heart. "Commander," Sullivan's voice was steel. "Move." They barely made it 3 steps before the impact hit. The entire ship lurched, throwing Felger into the bulkhead. His armor absorbed the blow, but the force rattled his teeth. Something had boarded them, and it wasn't alone. Sullivan's comms crackled. "Felger status, a leave," he gritted out. "But we've got company." The corridor ahead shimmered, then split open. A figure stepped through. Its body was made of the same shifting, smoke-like material as the ship outside. Its limbs too long. Its face, if it had one, nothing but a void. Felger's rifle came up on instinct. The thing tilted its head, not in words. Images flooded Felger's mind. Ruins, war, a galaxy burning. The precursors hadn't just died. They had been hunted. And now, the hunters had returned. Sullivan's voice cut through the static. "Felger, shoot it." He didn't hesitate. The plasma round hit the thing center. Mass, and passed straight through. The creature didn't flinch. It just smiled. And then it lunged. Malvar watched in horror as the human vessel's systems flickered, then went dark. Thalolan's voice was barely a whisper. "They're gone." Malvar's talons dug deeper into the armrests. And if the humans fell, the Malthari would be next. He made a decision. Open a channel to the human vessel. Thalolan stared. "What?" Malvar's voice was iron. "We're calling customer service." The Malthari command vessel Sovereign Light hung in the void, its bioluminescent panels flickering like a dying star. Malvar's talons had left deep gouges in the crystalline armrests of his command throne. The human ship, indomitable, they called it, was a shadow now, its running lights extinguished, its engines cold. Only the faintest energy signatures pulsed from its core, like the last stubborn beats of a wounded heart. Thalolan's voice was brittle. "They're gone." Malvar didn't answer. His eyes remained locked on the sensor feed, where the human vessel drifted, its hull scarred by something else. Something that didn't register on Malthari scanners. A predator that moved through space like a whisper through a graveyard. Thalolan's crest of spines flattened in despair. "We should withdraw, if whatever killed them turns its attention to us." Malvar cut him off with a single raised claw. On the screen, the Indomitable shuddered. A single light flickered back to life. Then another, a burst of plasma fire erupted from one of its dorsal turrets, searing through the void. The shot didn't hit anything visible, but something screamed. A sound that shouldn't have existed in vacuum. A psychic shriek that clawed at Malvar's mind, like broken glass. Thalolan staggered. What in the name of the first winds? Malvar's blood ran cold. The humans weren't dead. They were fighting back. And if they could fight that, whatever that was, then the Malthari had severely misjudged them. He made a decision. Open a channel to the human vessel. Thalolan's eyes widened. "You can't be serious. Their comms are dead." Malvar's voice was iron. "Not to us." The Malthari didn't use radio. Their communications were quantum, entangled, woven into the fabric of space itself. A technology they had never shared with another species. Until now, Thalolan hesitated, then input the command. The air shimmered with purple, white energy as the link established. A human voice, ragged but alive. "This is Commander Sullivan of the UEF Indomitable. Identify yourself." Malvar exhaled. "Commander, this is High Captain Malvar of the Malthari Sovereignty. We are offering assistance." A pause, then a dry, exhausted laugh. "Assistance? You mean you finally realized we're all on the menu? Malvar's spine stiffened. The human was right. Whatever was out there, it didn't discriminate. Sullivan's voice hardened. Listen carefully, Malvar. We've got one shot at this. Your fancy quantum tech? We need it. Now, Thalolan hissed. They want our entanglement arrays. That's desperate. Sullivan finished. Yeah, welcome to the club. Malvar stared at the screen. The human ship was still dark, still bleeding atmosphere, still standing, against something that had slaughtered the precursors. He made another decision. Thalolan, transmit the schematics. The scientist recoiled. You can't. The data streamed across the void. Seconds later, the Indomitable's engines flared back to life, not with their usual blue-white burn, but with a rippling aurora. Like glow, Malthari energy, human ingenuity, and then the ship moved toward the thing in the dark. Thalolan whispered, "They're insane." Malvar watched. Something like awe coiling in his chest. Not insane. The Indomitable cut through the void like a blade through silk, its newly modified engines painting the darkness with rippling auroras of purple-white energy. The Malthari entanglement arrays hummed in harmony with human engineering, a marriage of desperation and brilliance. Malvar watched from the bridge of his own vessel, his crystalline fingers tightening around the command rail. The human ship was no longer just a machine of war. It had become something else entirely. A hybrid, a predator, wearing the skin of its prey inside the indomitable commander. Helen Sullivan exhaled slowly, her breath fogging the inside of her helmet. The ship's diagnostics flickered across her HUD. Systems stabilizing, weapons recalibrating, shields reforged with Malthari quantum resilience. It shouldn't have worked, but it had. That was humanity's curse. And its gift. Corporal David Felger crouched in the belly of the ship, his fingers dancing over jury-rigged control panels. The Malthari schematics had been alien, almost alive, their flowing organic circuits resisting human logic. But Felger had seen worse. Head grown up patching together scavenged tech in the Martian slums. This was just another puzzle, and he loved puzzles. The ship shuddered as it closed the distance to the thing in the dark. The entity that had slaughtered the precursors, the nightmare that had turned the Malthari's greatest warriors to dust. It loomed ahead, a shifting mass of void, black tendrils and pulsing, sickly light. It didn't move like a ship, it moved like a creature. Felger's hand stilled for a moment, then he grinned. Thalolan's breath hitched as the Indomitable fired, not with railguns, not with plasma. With their technology, a beam of pure ionized violet energy lanced out, striking the entity's core. The void screamed, its form writhing as the Malthari, human hybrid weapon tore into it. The energy wasn't just destructive, it was adaptive. Just like the humans who wielded it, Malvar's spines flared in shock. They weaponized our science in minutes. Thalolan's voice was hollow. No, they understood it. Sullivan didn't celebrate. She saw the readings. The entity was wounded, but not dead, and now it was angry. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, wrapping around the Indomitable's hull. The ship groaned, its hybrid shields flickering under the strain. Alarms blared. Somewhere deep in the ship, a conduit burst, flooding a corridor with acrid smoke. Felger coughed, his fingers flying over the controls. "Commander, we've got a problem." Sullivan didn't flinch. "Solutions, Corporal, not problems." Felger's grin returned, sharp and wild. "Oh, I've got a solution." He punched in a command. The Indomitable's engines flared. Not to escape. Malvar's blood ran cold as he realized what the humans were doing. They weren't retreating. They weren't even fighting. They were embracing the collision. The Indomitable surged forward, its hull screaming as it rammed into the entity's heart. The world turned white. When the sensors cleared, the void was empty. "No Indomitable," Thalolan whispered. "They're gone." Malvar stared at the static-filled screen, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. victorious. And for the first time in his long calculating life, Malvar felt something like respect. Not for their strength, not for their defiance, but for the sheer, stupid, beautiful audacity of it all. Section Faye. Negotiating under duress, the silence on the Malthari command vessel was absolute. Malvar's claws flexed against the crystalline console, the faint hum of the ship's atmospheric ionizers, the only sound in the chamber. The void where the Indomitable had been was now just an expanse of drifting debris, some of it human, most of it the shattered remnants of the entity that had threatened them all. Thalolan's bioluminescent markings flickered erratically, a sign of distress. His voice, when it finally came, was barely audible. They sacrificed themselves. Malvar didn't respond. His mind was still replaying the last moments, the human warship, battered and burning, turning into the collision instead of away. The way its engines had flared not in retreat, but in defiance. The way the entity had screamed, as the Indomitable tore through its core. It shouldn't have worked. It shouldn't have. A proximity alert chimed softly. Malvar's head snapped up. Something was emerging from the debris field, not wreckage, not the entity. A single, battered escape pod. Human design, its hull scorched black, its thrusters sputtering. Thalolan inhaled sharply. Life signs? The scanner confirmed it before Malvar could answer. Malvar's crest of sensory spines stiffened. Impossible. The escape pod had no right to survive that. No Malthari pod would have. The radiation alone should have cooked the occupant alive. The pod drifted closer, its emergency beacon pulsing in a slow, steady rhythm. Malvar hesitated. Protocol demanded he destroy it. The humans had proven too dangerous, too unpredictable. The pod's hatch cracked open. A figure emerged. Not a soldier, small, fragile, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Its face streaked with soot and tears. It clutched something in its arms. A data slate, cracked but still glowing faintly. Thalolan made a sound like a choked breath. A juvenile? Malvar's claws retracted. This changed things. Humans were one matter. A child was another. The pod must have launched in the final seconds, a last desperate act of preservation. The child looked up at the Malthari vessel, its eyes wide, its breath fogging in the cold. It didn't scream, didn't beg, it just waited. Malvar exhaled. Bring it aboard. The child, a girl according to the data slate's fragmented records, was silent as the Malthari medics examined her. She didn't resist, didn't flinch. She just watched. Thalolan studied the slate. This isn't just personal data, he murmured. It's a full tactical log. The Indomitable's final moments, every weapon discharge, every system failure. And, he paused, receipts. Malvar frowned. Receipts, Thalolan's markings pulsed in confusion. Yes, for the ship's construction, every bolt, every circuit, every gram of armor, plating itemized, with warranties. Malvar stared. The humans had gone to their deaths with receipts, as if they expected someone to bill them for the destruction. The girl finally spoke then, her voice small but steady. They said to give this to you. She held out the slate. Malvar took it. The screen flickered to life, a recorded message. Commander Helen Sullivan's face filled the display, her expression calm, her eyes burning with that same terrifying human resolve. If you're seeing this, she said, then we're dead, and you're alive because of it. You're welcome. Malvar's spines flattened. The recording continued. But here's the thing. We didn't do this for you. We did it for her. The image shifted slightly, revealing the girl in the background, wrapped in a survival blanket, clutching a stuffed toy. And if you harm her, if you so much as think about it, Sullivan smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Well, let's just say the Indomitable wasn't the only ship we built. The screen went dark. Malvar set the slate down carefully. The girl was still watching him. He exhaled. You will be returned to your people, he said at last. Thalolan twitched. Malvar, the girl nodded. Then hesitantly, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. She held it out. Malvar took it. A child's drawing. Stick figures. A ship. A smiling sun. And beneath it, in uneven letters, Malvar stared at it for a long moment. Then, very carefully, he folded it and placed it in his own storage compartment. Prepare a shuttle, he said. Thalolan hesitated. You're letting her go. Malvar looked at the girl, then at the void where the Indomitable had been. Yes, he said, and for the first time he understood. Humans didn't fight for glory or conquest or even survival. They fought for this. For the chance to send one child home. Malvar turned away. We will escort her ourselves. The shuttle bay doors sealed behind them with a whisper of ionized air, the purple, white glow of Malthari atmospheric condensers casting long, liquid shadows across the deck. Malvar stood motionless as the girl, the human child, was guided aboard the sleek crystalline transport by two of his junior officers. She moved without fear now, her small fingers brushing against the curved organic bulkheads as if memorizing their texture. Thalolan lingered at his side, his bioluminescent markings flickering with unspoken tension. This is a mistake, the scientist murmured, his voice barely louder than the hum of the ship's power currents. Malvar didn't answer. His gaze remained fixed on the shuttle's translucent viewport, where the girl had pressed her palm against the glass, watching them. She was still holding the stuffed toy, the one he had given her, the one she had clutched like a lifeline in the dark. A muscle in Malvar's jaw twitched. The Malthari Dominion did not escort prisoners home. It did not spare enemies. It did not fold away children's drawings like sacred relics. The shuttle's engines flared to life, streams of aurora, colored energy rippling through its crystalline nacelles. The deck trembled beneath their feet as the craft lifted, hovering for a heartbeat before sliding soundlessly into the void. Malvar exhaled, then turned toward the command nexus. The coordinates the girl had provided were wrong. Not incorrect. Impossible. Thalolan's long fingers danced across the holographic display, his bioluminescence pulsing erratically as the data streamed in. There's nothing here, he said, voice tight. No station, no outpost, no energy signatures, just debris. Malvar finished. The wreckage was old, centuries perhaps, twisted metal and shattered composite plating, drifting in the silent dark, no life signs, no distress beacons, just death. The girl had lied. Malvar's spine stiffened. She hadn't. The realization struck him like a plasma round to the chest. This had been her home, before something or someone had erased it from existence. Thalolan's breath hitched. Then where, a proximity alert blared, the scanners lit up, and the void rippled. The ship that emerged from the distortion was unlike anything in Malthari records. Not a warship, not a freighter, a monument, titanic, angular, its armored hull scarred from battles no living being could comprehend. Its prow bore the faded insignia of a long-dead nation, the paint peeled by centuries of cosmic radiation. It was alive. Power thrummed through its veins, ancient reactors growling like waking beasts. Lights flickered in its cavernous hangars, and along its spine, massive railgun batteries cycled online, with a sound like thunder trapped in steel. Thalolan recoiled. What in the name of the first winds? Malvar didn't move, because he knew this was no derelict. This was a gravekeeper, and it had been waiting. The transmission was audio only, a human voice, rough with age and static. Malthari vessel, you have something of ours. Malvar's hand hovered over the comm panel. Then slowly, he opened the channel. She is safe, he said. The words were not a threat. They were a promise. And in that moment, Malvar understood the true horror of humanity. They did not forget. They did not forgive. And they would cross 1,000 years of night to bring one child home. Thololan's breath was ragged. "Malvar, prepare the shuttle," Malvar said, his voice hollow. "We're returning her?" Outside, the ancient warship's guns tracked their every move, remembering, and Malvar knew this was not mercy. This was a warning. Section Fey. Return to sender. The shuttle bay doors groaned open, exhaling a breath of frozen void. Malvar stood at the threshold, his carapace plates tight against his thorax. The stolen human child, their child, lay curled in the med pod behind him, her tiny fingers clutching the frayed edge of a thermal blanket. Thololan had sedated her, a kindness. Beyond the bay, the ancient Terran warship loomed. It shouldn't have been possible. The vessel was a relic, its armor pitted by centuries of cosmic abrasion, its angular silhouette a brutalist mockery of the Malthari's flowing organic designs. Purple, white energy cascaded along its weapon housings in jagged, hungry arcs. No gentle ionization currents here, only the seething promise of violence held in check by rusted restraints. Malvar's mandibles twitched. The humans had not come with sleek diplomacy or reasoned negotiation. They had come with receipts. The shuttle's engines whined as it detached, drifting across the gulf between ships. Thololan's claws tapped rapid fire against the nav console. "Their targeting systems are still active," he murmured, the bioluminescent nodes along his crest flickering amber with stress. "They haven't powered down a single weapon." Malvar didn't answer. His secondary eyes tracked the warship's spinal, mounted railgun, its barrel a yawning tunnel large enough to swallow their entire cruiser. The humans had built it backward, facing a design choice so deranged it looped back into tactical brilliance. Any pursuer would eat a relativistic round the moment they gave chase. The shuttle shuddered as it crossed some unseen threshold. The Terran warship's hangar yawned open. Darkness waited inside. No guiding lights, no atmospheric containment field. Just a cavernous maw lined with the skeletal remains of fighter craft, their hulls stripped bare, their cockpits gaping like skulls. Thololan's breath hitched. "They're not pressurizing the bay." Malvar's claws flexed. Of course not. The humans didn't need air. The shuttle settled onto the deck with a metallic groan. Through the viewport, shadows shifted. Figures emerged from the gloom. Not the sleek armored soldiers the Malthari had expected, but things wrapped in tattered environmental suits, their visors fogged, their movements jerky and uneven. One limped forward, dragging a damaged servo, leg behind it. Another cradled a rifle with a barrel warped from sustained overheating. Thololan made a soft, distressed click. "These aren't soldiers. These are." The lead figure reached the shuttle's airlock. Its suit was patched with crude welds and handwritten markings. A single word, scrawled in flaking paint across its chestplate. The airlock cycled. Cold rushed in. Malvar's respiratory spiracles clamped shut instinctively against the biting vacuum. But the human, Felger, didn't react. Its visor tilted downward, staring at the med pod. Then, with agonizing slowness, it reached out and peeled back the thermal blanket. The child stirred, her face pale, her lips tinged blue from prolonged cryo-sleep. Felger went utterly still. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moved. Then the human's glove brushed the child's cheek. Careful, so careful, and its shoulders hunched. A sound leaked through the comms, static at first, then the ragged, fractured edges of a sob. Thololan recoiled. "They're crying." Malvar felt the deck tilt beneath him. This wasn't a retrieval. This was a resurrection. Felger straightened, its visor lifted, locking onto Malvar. The Malthari commander had faced down plasma fires and stellar storms, but nothing, compared to the weight of that gaze. No words passed between them, none were needed. The human turned, cradling the child against its chest, and limped back into the dark. Behind it, the shadows moved, dozens of them, hundreds, all watching, all waiting. The shuttle's calm crackled. A new voice, female, sharp with command. Malthari vessel. Malvar knew that tone. Helen Sullivan, your coordinates are logged. Don't make us come back. The transmission cut. The hangar doors began to close as the last sliver of light vanished. Malvar saw them. The humans, standing in perfect formation, their weapons raised in silent salute. Not to him, to the child. The shuttle lifted off, fleeing the tomb ship's gravity well. The Lowland's claws trembled on the controls. They let us go. Malvar stared at the retreating warship, its guns still tracking, still hungry. No, he said softly. They let us live. The Malthari shuttle shuddered as it broke free of the tomb. Ship's gravity well, its crystalline hull still humming with residual energy from the human vessel's proximity. The Lowland's claws danced over the controls, adjusting their trajectory with the precision of a surgeon. Yet his movements were too quick, too sharp. Fear had sunk its teeth into him. Malvar did not speak. He stood at the viewport, watching the human warship recede into the void. Its silhouette was jagged, asymmetrical, a predator's outline against the stars. The guns had not fired, the engines had not flared in pursuit, yet he felt their presence like a blade resting against his throat. The Lowland exhaled, his bioluminescent markings flickering erratically. They could have killed us. His voice was thin, stretched too tight. They had every reason. Malvar said nothing. His gaze remained fixed on the warship until it was nothing more than a speck of shadow against the nebulous glow. Then, slowly, he turned to the data console. The humans had left more than just warnings. The system was flooded with files, thousands of them, tagged, indexed, labeled in both Malthari script and the blocky angularity of human text. Malvar's crest stiffened. The first file unfolded before him, a security feed time-stamped from 3 solar cycles ago. Grainy, distorted, but unmistakable. A Malthari raiding party, their armor gleaming violet under the harsh light of a dying star. Their prey, a human colony transport, unarmed, its hull marked with the universal symbols for medical evacuation. The feed showed everything: the boarding, the executions, the child, his child, being torn from the arms of a human medic. Malvar's breath caught. The Lowland made a sound like a wounded animal. They saw. Malvar's claws flexed, scraping against the console. Of course they had seen. The humans had not come blindly. They had not come in rage. They had come with proof. The next file was a casualty report. The dead of the colony transport, doctors, engineers, a handful of soldiers who had died, buying time for the escape pods. The one after that was a tactical analysis. Malthari ship signatures, raid patterns, weak points in their shielding. The Lowland's voice shook. This is a warning. Malvar finished. Not just of what the humans could do, but what they knew. The final file was a single image, a human child's drawing, crude and smudged, depicting a stick, figure family beneath a yellow sun scrawled across the top in uneven letters. Come home soon, Daddy. Malvar closed his eyes. The shuttle's engines hummed. The stars stretched past, cold and indifferent. Somewhere in the dark, the humans were waiting. Remembering, the Lowland whispered. What do we tell the High Council? Malvar exhaled. The truth, that the humans were not monsters. They were something far worse. They were righteous, and they had kept the receipts.